look at people like Alan Sugar, Richard Branson, even Trump himself. These are people that have had businesses go bankrupt. They've had businesses go collapse. And they're multi-millionaires. There's no embarrassment to create a business and it not work. That's part of business, that not every idea you have is going to be successful. It's the lessons you learn from that. So when you go back again, you're much more equipped to do it.
Hi, this is Max, and I'd like to introduce everybody to Emmanuel. Emmanuel, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, Max. My name is Emmanuel. I'm a financial advisor, TV personality, author, and my job is just to help people that work really hard for their money, make money work hard for them.
What you do is it's bigger than it seems, if that makes sense, in terms of how it impacts people individually. You've actually helped a couple that I know, and now they were stuck in a property. They wanted to get another property, and you just helped them sort of sort out what they needed to do to also protect their children in the future. So there was that generational wealth bit as well. So I think I really wanted to start with you going back to the beginning. How did we get from there to sort of TV personality, author, father of four, husband?
Yes, no, great. It's been a great journey, and I thank God all the way. But I started off in the council estate, Tower Hamlets, a place called Limehouse. Grew up with my parents and my two younger sisters. I'm the eldest child, firstborn in the UK. So, you got that pressure, especially being Nigerian, of when you're the eldest child, you got to lead by example. And for a Nigerian example is education. So you must do well at school and read your books. Unfortunately for me, that was not my forte. So we had little issues, and I thought sport was going to be my answer to changing my life and so forth. And so I didn't really take school that seriously. But then I decided that, okay, if I don't make it, what's the backup plan?
In the book, you talk about Jim Carrey and the Dumb and Dumber, the sort of check, he wrote the check to himself and sort of making that contract with yourself. Yes. And so I think you did the same thing, didn't you? Sort of
yes.
you did that thing of people might call it manifestation or visualization, etc. But that thing of projecting what you wanted out there and being really, really clear as to what it was that you wanted.
Where I lived, Limehouse, is right next to Canary Wharf, and I used to look at the buildings in Canary Wharf. And I used to look at these buildings and just be like, I used to get in trouble for leaving the light on in the kitchen. And so imagine getting beats for leaving the light on in the kitchen, and you go into your room, look out your window, and at night time, all the lights are on in all these buildings, and they've all gone home. So to my young mind, I was like, these guys are rich. Like, they've got so much money, they can leave the lights on. And that became my kind of vision board before I even knew what a vision board was. Before I knew, I just had to see something better than my situation. And I always tell people that, what's your Canary Wharf? What's your thing that you see that's beyond your current situation? Because sometimes we are so focused on where we're at, we can't see where we're going. And so you need to have something bigger than yourself, something that doesn't define where you're at. Sometimes we define ourselves by our current situation. I'm on a council estate, I'm not doing well at school, I'm not going to achieve much. But actually, I could see these buildings and I'm like, if I can get over there, I'll achieve. And to cut a long story short, by 22, I became the youngest financial advisor in Barclays in the country. And that was kind of how I started my journey in finance. And it was all from just looking at these buildings and having a dream bigger than myself.
As a Black person growing up in the UK, that's something that was available to us in terms of learning those kind of skills, because obviously it wasn't on the curriculum at school, but so where did you learn that, if anywhere?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of it's your environment and who you surround yourself with. Well, my best friend, he was a refugee from Ethiopia. Normally, I'd say I'm deprived because, we live in a council estate. My parents are struggling to pay the bills and stuff like that. But I met someone who's had it even harder than me. And they still managed to get up every day. They still managed to find a way to smile, and they were still hungry and focused for more and to live better. And so because of that, that really pushed me to say, well, actually, I'm not going to look at what I don't have. I'm going to use what I have to try and change my situation.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that, though. I think that's interesting that you say that, sort of looking at themselves. They can maybe identify it in someone else. So that's where an accountability partner makes sense, where someone else would
Yes,
say to you, well, hold on a minute, you're really good at
yes.
this, you're really good at keeping people organized, go and be a VA. You know what I mean? There's skills like, it doesn't have to be original, exciting. It could be very, but a lot of people, I think, are not particularly good at picking up those skills.
Yeah, because I feel like, accountability is great, but the first person you must be accountable is to yourself. Like, because sometimes we do it. We go to people and like, oh yeah, I want to lose some weight and stuff like that, and check up on me and whatever. But when you go home, you're eating biscuits and things that you shouldn't eat. When then the person that's trying to hold you accountable is not around and they're not going to know. So you first have to be accountable to yourself and say, these are the things I want for myself. These are the changes I'm going to make. This is the contract. This is the standard that I'm going to live by, and I'm going to hold myself to this before you then get someone else to hold you accountable. The only thing I haven't done is the sacrifices that I had to make to get here. So things like I've never been to like Ibiza party, and I've never done those like I haven't done that part. I haven't. There's loads of raves I haven't gone to or parties, or I've missed so many of my friends' birthday parties, and I've had to sacrifice to really stay focused in what I wanted to achieve. So if there are things that I've missed, like I feel like they were worth missing now, but at the time they felt like really big sacrifices when my friends were doing stuff and I wasn't involved. But I had to look at the bigger picture.
So a lot of people, especially since the pandemic, they're looking to, start a side hustle, start something new, start a new form of income, not just be PAYE. What would you suggest for somebody who is looking for a new side hustle?
Yeah, I always tell people when it comes to this, the biggest thing that you got to think about when you want to do a side hustle or you want to increase your income is value. What value do you have that you can give someone? Who can you help? Because if you can work out who you can help, like what service you can provide, what skills you have, what knowledge you have, what experience you have, what connections you have, if you can help people, they'll pay you for that. When people hear that, sometimes they feel, oh, I don't have anything of value. So the first thing you need to do is add value to yourself. You need to look at what skills can you do. But a lot of the time, people underestimate the values they have. Like you work in a job. What do you do on a day to day? Can you do that outside of work? Is there certain skills that you have through work that can be monetized? Is there certain information or stuff that you do that you can provide other people that can help them? So I always say start there. Let me give you an example. One of my clients, she works in the government, and she works for a particular department that assesses grants. So when people want to get grants, she assesses grants. And I was like, do you know how many businesses would love help and support on how to write grants, like how to write proposals for grants? And she was like, I'd never thought about that. And so she started a company helping small businesses apply for grants. And if I'm going to get a grant, apply for a grant, and I'm going to get 10, 20,000 or 30,000 or whatever it may be, why wouldn't I pay £2,000, £3,000 for that information or that knowledge? And so actually, it's the things that we do on a day to day that we can really monetize. But also, you might be your passion. I had one other guy. They love football, so they created a football tour where they have all this knowledge from all the grounds that they've been to, and they created a tour where they take people around different football grounds and give them all the information, go to the local, maybe not just in the ground, but around the area, and where certain players lived and where certain things happen in it. That is a natural knowledge. That's not new information that they had to learn. That's something that they were passionate about and they were able to monetize. And so, we all have skills and gifts. It's just about where do you use it? Who can you add value to? I always tell people, don't wake up thinking about how do I make money, worrying about money. Wake up thinking, who can I help? And it's a much better way to live your life.
If you had not gotten into finance, let's say that hadn't been your journey, and let's say in the pandemic
Yeah.
you were found jobless, what do you think you would do? What would be your first moves out of that? What would be the side hustle like? Is there a passion that you have that you'd be thinking, you know what, I could turn that into something maybe?
I think for me, my number one skill is just being able to talk and speak and make people laugh and smile. So I would have done a service based job. The reason I like service based businesses is that, especially if it's stuff that's one to one, then, or one to many, you can use platforms like Zoom that are quite low cost, or Google Meets that it's not a high cost to be able to have access to them. But now you can get access to multiple people, and your clients are not just based where you are; they can be anywhere in the world. So I think I would always look at service based business, something that, what service can you provide, what value can you provide, where's your market, and just focus on that, and then that help that bring in income. Once I've done that, is about where can I put that. One of my friends, he had a friend who wanted to do Uber, but his credit was so bad he couldn't get a car out on finance. So his friend said, "Oh, can you get me a car on finance?" So he was like, "Okay." So he got him a car on finance, charged him a fee, charged him a bit extra for than what he was paying the finance and so forth, and made some income. And then found out that this is a problem for a lot of people who wanted to do Uber, have bad credit, and now owns over 150 Toyota Priuses. And so he had a job that gave him money, but he didn't have much time. So he's able to invest in something that doesn't require him to be there every single day and help people. And now he's made so much money, he no longer needs a job. Now that's his full time. But he still doesn't have to be there every single day. Just he's got the systems in place to make sure that the cars are monitored and maintenance is done and everything is done. And he lives a wonderful life. So the point is, even if you are time poor, think about what can you do, what can you put your money in that can make it work. And that's again where partnership comes in. Who can I partner with? Is there a young person who maybe has a lot of time and a lot of energy that I can partner with, and they can do all the legwork while I'm at work, and then we can give them a split on whatever the deal is. So there are loads of ways to get it done.
So I suppose there came a point where you had to transition out of working for like the Barclays of the world in the finance, and then moving into sort of like a scarier place of being really, really self-employed. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, so that journey was tough, So I used to work in the banks. Obviously, I was very young, very black, very different from my colleagues, to say the least. And so it was a very hard environment for me to be myself and really express myself, because I don't know, the way we're in finance, we've always got to take exams and qualifications. And so for me to understand the information, I had to break it down in my language, in the way I understand the world. And so I felt like I couldn't express it back out in that way, because, you almost hired me, a young black man, but when you wanted me to speak, you wanted me to speak like a middle-aged white man. And it was like, I just can't do it. I just don't, it's just not me. It doesn't, and your clients can tell. They can tell that you're not being genuine. They can tell that you're not comfortable. And if I'm trying to get you to invest your life savings, you want to feel like the person's comfortable with what they're doing and what they're saying. And so it even affected me in regards to my performance and how I could do my job, because I just wasn't comfortable. And so I got to a place where, I got made redundant a few times, and I was like, actually, the third time, my wife had just given birth to our fourth child. I went on 2 weeks paternity leave, came back, and they made me redundant. And I was like, I'm not going to leave feeding my family and go and get another job in the hands of someone else. I've got to take this into my own hands. And so I had the redundancy, I had my savings, and I knew I didn't need to go back to work for another 9 months. And I was like, I'm just going to make it work. I was doing social media in the evenings and weekends. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to make this work. And so I went full time, committed to social media. I took little odd jobs where I needed to, little contracts and, things that I could do because I had certain experiences where they came up, and I just did it. And it was March 2019 that I left. And by August 2019, I got my first TV show with Channel 4. We had 2020, we had the lockdown, where now they were talking about money. Then we had George Floyd. They were like, oh, we need black people to talk about money. And here I am. You know what I mean? And I always tell people, sometimes if I said, oh, they're looking for black people to talk about money, and started doing content at that time, it would have been too late. A lot of the time, you've got to do the work, and then the opportunity will come whilst you've done the work. So don't wait for the opportunity. Go and do the work. Go and be active. Go and let people know about you and your services and what you offer. And when opportunities arise, you'll be able to take them.
And yeah, so then TV is like a very different space, because although, they wanted you because of, like, Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff, it's still the same thing where they have, it's systemic. They have their kind of rules and regs, etc. How much freedom were you allowed to be yourself? Because I think that's quite important to be, like you said, genuine.
It's a great question. When I first started TV, I didn't even know whatever the producer or the director said say, I would just copy, I'll just say it word for word. And obviously, because of that, I would stumble because you're not saying natural words that you would use. And so I remember when I look back at like my first TV shows, I feel like you was a robot. You wasn't free at all because you're new. You don't really know your own style. You haven't created your own persona. But as I got more comfortable, I just started talking like me on the television. I started to get feedback and it was like, he's so relatable. We can really relate. We never heard someone talk finance and just be funny and be light-hearted and not be so serious and be down to earth and feel like they understand what we're going through. And so then we saw a big change where now I feel like I've affected what an expert looks like. And now when we see experts on the TV, they no longer have to wear a suit. They no longer have to be so serious. And so it's almost gone a full circle where they've realized there's a new formula. And actually, when people see people in suits, they think of politicians and bankers. And let's be honest, those are not two favorite people right now. So actually, let's move away from that. So yeah, it's been a big journey, but I feel I am able to be myself now.
Yeah, you're right. It's a scary time. There's a lot of, like, unknowns in the next 6 months to 2 years, and that's where people who are looking to, like, income create, etc., they can, because that's the point where it's like there's usually opportunities in that space. Is that something that clients are coming to you a lot more with now, kind of sort of saying, look, how do I invest better, or how do I, like, make more money? What kind of questions are you getting from your clients?
A lot of people are realizing that one income is not enough, so they are looking at how do I increase my income, how do I get investing, how do I start to really make this money work for me, and that's where we look at side hustles and businesses and what are we doing from 5 to 9, but then also just investing for their kids, investing for themselves. Property is something that's big here in the UK, and I think that's something a lot of us from our community, we don't understand. We think it's so hard or so complicated to get on the market, but actually it's not. Our biggest problem is that we go alone. The Asian community, particularly I'm talking the Indian community, when we look at the number of them in the UK compared to the amount of home ownership, they even by percentage, their percentage of home ownership is even more than white people in the UK. And that's because they buy in twos and threes. And even when their children get married, they move back in, even though they'll be a doctor, their wife will be a doctor or a solicitor. They've got great jobs, but they understand that to really make life better and make things work, we need to work as a unit. There needs to be group economics. And I think for us as a community, we've become so individualized. If we look at when we had most ownership or when we were buying properties, it was the Caribbeans using partner. Why were they using partner? Because banks wouldn't give them money. And now it's almost a case of, because banks are allowing us to have more access to finance, we've now said, well, we don't need each other anymore. We're going to go separate. Whereas other communities are going together. And so property is something that we need to come together on and do more, and also move together. This is a problem. One of the biggest problems we see is that when we buy alone. And so you now buy in an area where you can afford, and now there's no plantain on the high street. You can't get your hair product. So you've got to come back to London to get and it's like, actually, we should move together. Because if we all spoke and said, oh, there's 20 or 30 or 50 of us moving here, our children wouldn't be alone in schools and they'll be less likely to get bullied. We'd have shops would cater for us because there's more of us in those spaces. And so it would be better for all of us. We have to be strategic, but we are very much ununified. And so those are the types of changes I'm trying to get across in my content and when I'm speaking to people.
I think it's an interesting one. So I run London Black Professionals, and I've been running it for 18 years. And, that thing of group economics, working together, there's an underlying distrust for group economics now,
Yes.
which wasn't there, like you said, in the days of Pardner and the sort of like the 80s and 90s when our parents arrived. It was very different. It was a very different sort of like conversation to be had. So I'm wondering about how that can be changed. Is that something that perhaps is something that could be church led? Do you see what I mean? So people already have something that
Yes.
is focusing them on a community. So if a church said, "Oh, I'm going to move to Kent," a lot of Black families I've noticed are moving to Kent, by the way. So like, I'm going to go move to Kent, and the church is going to be there, and therefore the shops, etc., will follow. Is that something that maybe needs to be church led or mosque led as opposed to anything else?
I think it needs to be community led. I think we need to be speaking to each other more. I think we need to be, again, I feel like you mentioned like the distrust. And I think that's something that we have to also look at ourselves. I think, number one, we have to be people of integrity. If I tell people I'm going to be able to do something, I need to be able to do it. And if I know I'm not 100% confident that I can do it, then don't do it. Don't put yourself forward. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually, or collaborate with someone that gives you that confidence. Because sometimes, again, we want 100% of nothing. We want to do it all by ourselves. But actually, if you're 60% confident that you can deliver, go find someone else that can give you that 40% and then share and actually know that you can deliver. Then on top of that, again, as people, we need to be more wise. We need to have contracts. I sit down with rich and wealthy people that do not like one another, but they do business together. And they say, I don't trust him or her, but I trust the contract. I believe I know if the worst happens, is here in writing what I stand to lose or gain or what my risk is. And I'm prepared for that risk. And so actually, don't just because you've gone to a meeting or gone to an event, say, oh, because I trust this person, I'm just going to give them money and word of mouth. Because if things go bad, you have nothing to fall on apart from a few WhatsApp messages. And that's not really going to hold up in court.
Are there any mistakes that you make that you think, actually, if I'd had the right advice, whatever, I wouldn't have done that?
I've seen it where people have created really great businesses, but they didn't pattern anything. And so people who are a lot smarter and maybe devious, and I'm not saying it's right, but they're able to steal your company. They're able to steal your name and steal, because you never actually patterned any of it. They're able to get your website taken down. I had, one of my good friends set up a hair company, and what she named it already existed. And once it got successful, she got a cease and desist. She had to change that name, and she went to go speak to a lawyer at that time, and I said, "Listen, the name already existed, it was already trademarked, and in a similar field, you can't have that name." And so had to go and change the name, and that meant all rebranding, taking everything out of suppliers, taking things out of shops that were already in, taking it back, relabeling. It was a very costly lesson. So again, sometimes it's good to make sure that you're doing these checks and have the right patterns and even, insurances. Sometimes if you say you're a business and you're a serious business, make sure you have the right insurances, because if something goes wrong on your premises or at your event, you will be liable. And these are the things that have led people to have to, file for bankruptcy or have to close their business down because of small mistakes that they didn't just, dot the I's and cross the T's.
Is there anything that you feel like you haven't done that you kind of thought you would have done, when you first started out?
Well, I think the biggest thing is being busy. I think sometimes you get a business and you've got so many ideas that you just get busy with all these ideas, but you don't actually look at your numbers and say, where am I actually making money? Because that's where I need to focus most of my time. And once I make enough money, this is the second thing that we don't do enough, is we don't hire. And it's a big problem. We make money and you've got a business making 100, 200, 300K and you are the only staff member. And it's like, no, you've got to start understanding that, you can't be the receptionist anymore. You can't be replying to all the emails. For you really to take your business to the next level and even for you to really enjoy business, you need to hire people. And also, let's understand that most people like to hire people that look like them. So actually, if we are going into business, the best chance of our children getting employed is in one of our businesses. And so actually, we complain about nepotism for other people, but we can create businesses and create nepotism for ourselves. So it's really important that you understand that maybe like, that dream that you have to start that business is not just about you, but there's a whole community waiting to support what you do, but also there are people waiting to work and get their first work experience or their first job at your business.
And I just want to say to the audience, paid as well, because what I found, they love to do an internship that lasts years. And, literally, that's why a lot of the sort of production assistant jobs back in the day, they were like paying 6,000. No black person could afford to do that and still be able to live outside the house, So it was always rich or wealthy people that could take those jobs. So if you're taking on and you're hiring people to pay decent market rates, not to pay under, family, whatever, that they need to pay people properly and pay people completely, because some people just don't get paid and they sort of do a project for 6 months on an app that never really gets launched or something. Yeah, I think there's something around, there's a fear of debt, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes people don't understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. So, obviously we all had that run in with, a credit card company back in our 20s, or, we all, did that, new adults, whatever. But then, like you say, borrowing against your business where you're trying to raise capital to be able to make your business grow even further, that's good debt. But I do feel like that's not something that's explained particularly well.
Exactly. What you're saying is so true. And we look at people like, Alan Sugar, Richard Branson, even Trump himself. These are people that have had businesses go bankrupt. They've had businesses go collapse. And they're multi-millionaires. There's no embarrassment to create a business and it not work. That's part of business, that not every idea you have is going to be successful, but it's the lessons you learn from that. So when you go back again, you're much more equipped to do it. There is a fear of debt, or there is a fear of going bankrupt or it not working out. Actually, that means that when it comes time to you wanting to sell that business, nobody wants to buy it because you are your business. And your customers, your base, and the second you no longer are at that business, the customers won't turn up.
So how do you do that then? How do you work with individuals, or do you no longer do that as much?
I like managing the right people, so I feel like I'm very picky in who I work with. I know who I work well with, and I want to empower people to take ownership of whatever it is they do. We call it entrepreneurship. I always tell my employees, you're a business within a business. So think about what's your department? What do you run? You run that. That's your business within this business, and I'm empowering you because I'm hired you because I think you're great. And that's the big thing for me, is that once people understand the vision, empower them to have different ideas and push the company into different places.
What would you have liked as sort of like resource or support when you were coming up? What would have helped you, do you think, maybe accelerate the process of what getting to where you got to in 2019?
I think the big thing was role models. I just don't feel like I saw anybody that looked like me doing the things that I wanted to be doing. And I think it's so powerful. I always use the Usain Bolt. I remember growing up and the 100 meters, it was 998, 99, like under 10 seconds everybody was like, wow. And then Bolt ran like 9.5. And all of a sudden, even the person that finished last ran 9.8. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it's the levels have changed because what's possible. It's possible because you've seen it be done. And so sometimes it's like you have these ideas and then you look up, nobody looks like you, no one's your age, no one has a similar journey. And it just feels like, what? I'm not meant to be there. And so it becomes so much harder for you to really believe. And then also, I think just understanding how it's done. I remember when I got my first corporate job, my emails were absolutely atrocious because there was no lesson at school on how to send the professional email. And so I had to get like my manager's emails and see how he said, and then learn and develop a style from there. We need that in business. What are the templates of a successful business? What are the templates in getting funding? What are the things I need to show my bank for them to be able to give me an extended overdraft? How do I use credit responsibly as a way to increase my business as opposed to buying liabilities? How do I go, if I want to buy a house, should I buy it in my name? Should I buy it through a limited company? These are all questions that sometimes people don't even know how to ask the question because they haven't even got enough of the knowledge even to ask the right question. And so we have to really, empower people with the knowledge in order for them to be able to ask the right questions.
And do you have a team working with you now? You're not just Emmanuel by yourself?
So I've got a financial advice firm, Belvedere Wealth Management, which is regulated by the FCA, and we can do pensions, investments, and wills, trusts, all the normal stuff that you get at a normal financial advice firm. But I also have the E-Man Effect, which is a financial education company. And the reason I do that is that when it comes to financial advice, typically, to be a client, you need to either be on a salary well over 100K or, have, 50, 60, 70, nowadays, even up to some companies only take a minimum 100K before they'll even speak to you. And so coming from the communities I come from, I know that excludes a lot of people without saying you're not welcome. You're not welcome. Do you know what I mean? And so I created a financial education company to say, well, no matter wherever you're at, if you're in debt, I can still support you. If you want to get started, these are the tips to get started. And then once you reach that level, you can come across to my financial advice firm and we can start doing it that way. But when nobody should be left out. So I've got the E-Man Effect where we do financial education and support and understanding. But then also we've got books. I've got Get Your Money Right, which is a very simple, very easy, very simple step. Anyone from age 13, 14 up can, read it and get it and be able to get the fundamentals and the principles. And that's what I'm all about, is trying to make this as accessible as possible for people that feel like they don't belong in these environments.
That makes sense, because obviously people can start with the book and then move to the E-Man Effect if they're still sort of struggling and need some support, and then move on to the financial advice, when they're at a stage where they can. So it's it's a journey. You're taking people through
Exactly.
the journey. And when you start a new service or a new product or business, how do you set out your goal for it? Do you sort of say, well, look, I want this to make 200,000 in the next 6 months or whatever, and then give that to your staff member to sort of manage? Or do you do it differently? Are you a bit more of a micromanager at the beginning and then sort of let go later?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a person that looks at the end goal. Where do you want to be? What's the goal? And then my thing is just to remind people of the goal. As you start to go along, people start to hear what you do. There's other people that bring their opportunities to you and what they want to do. And it's always about remembering this is the goal. This is what we set out to do. This is what we want to achieve. And unless that changes, what's getting us closer to the goal, and as business happens, sometimes the goal changes and that's fine. But if the goal hasn't changed, always remember this is the goal. This is what we want to achieve. And we're trying to get closer to that and just empower people to help us get there.
So how do you think most of your clients find you? Is it through social media, through the TV stuff, or through the book?
Social media is probably the most where people see me. And again, I always tell people, that's what I can control. I can put content out every single day and people can view it. I can boost the post if I need to and get it into the hands of 100,000, 200,000 people if I need to. The television, I get if I go on certain shows, you've got 1 million people, just homes of 1 million people all at once. That will build credibility. And then I do campaigns. I do the ads for Barclays right now. So those ads, Barclays have a huge spend. So again, I get stopped on the street. Oh, are you the guy from the Barclays advert? And it's like, yes, that's me. And so there are loads of different ways, and it's about people just becoming comfortable with this is the face of financial advice in 2024.
Yeah, and you will. In terms of, I think there was a video that you did on Instagram where you talked about if you're single, if you're married, but you're working, and then if you're single and you're married but you're self-employed, and the difference that it made around things like tax, etc. How do you think single people can sort of maximize that income? Because it's really difficult if you're taxed so much more than you're actually double tax because you don't have a partner and you have to pay more money in tax.
What you just said is the key reason I did the video. It's for people to understand that if you are single and on your own, the more money you make, the more of it's being taxed. So one person earning 50,000, they'll pay up to 20% tax. One person earning 100,000 will pay up to 40% tax. Two people earning 50K each will still only pay 20% tax. So that in that household, they're taking home more. Now, if we then go to someone self-employed, you could have one person self-employed and their business brings in that 100,000. If they've got a partner that's not working, instead of taking all that money out themselves and paying tax on it, they can split that between their partner and be more efficient with it. So what I say to people that are single is look at ways that you can reduce your costs. Is it living at home? Is it, flat sharing until I can afford to buy on my own? And when I buy on my own, rather than buying a 1-bed, let me save up a bit extra and get a 2-bed so that at least if I need to, I can rent out that second room if I need to bring extra income in. These are the types of moves that you need to be making when you're single.
You've got a lot of videos out there on the gram, etc., etc. My favourite ones are of you and your wife. I think you've got a really good rapport. You can just see the love between the two. How did you guys meet?
Yeah, we met at church. So me and my wife, we went to the same church, but I had grown up in that church my whole life. My wife and her family came to the church a bit later on, and then it's a big church. So at that time, there were between on a Sunday there can be anywhere between 600 to 800 people on a Sunday. So it's very easy for you not to bump into people or just speak to people that you know regularly and so forth. We became friends, and I think that's why what people see when they see the videos is that we're actually really are friends. Like, as much as we're married, I don't feel like I'm married like that straight. I feel like I'm just with my partner, my friend, and we're just trying to do this thing called life together.
So then, in terms of money, then do you have similar money values, or is that something that you've had to sort of develop over time? Because a lot of us come from families where you spend what you make each month. You don't have this thing of like saving, investing, property, etc.
My wife was actually born in Nigeria and came over, and so her concept of money, her family had real struggles here in the UK. So she has much more of a courtesy mindset. She's very good at saving and not spending and budgeting, and rather than for example, in the lockdown, she learned how to cut hair. Now I only go to the barber if I really need it. Like, my wife's really good with her hands. She'll watch a YouTube video and change the sink if there's a leak, or do you know what I mean? She's that type of person. They learned to do everything at home because they didn't have much money and so forth, which is fine. But then sometimes when you want to now say, oh, let's use our money to invest in this or do that, or let's start this business or something, sometimes she can be a bit hesitant. But over time, she's seen it work, and, that's benefited us. But also for me, having her, be good with budgeting and saving has really helped us as a family, especially with, 4 children.
So it kind of balances you out really. Exactly. A little bit. So in terms of for your children, because I know that you said in the book that you're sort of encouraging them where they can make money to make money already. How is that going?
No, it's going fantastic. For me, money is a language, and it's something that I want to teach my kids that language of money and finance as early as possible. When we bought our house, my kids, they had to make cuts as well. They had to save as well because they're going to benefit. When we want to go on holiday, everybody's saving together. Within our household, when we do our shopping budget, the kids have a budget for themselves to select. So they understand that these things cost. We all try and look at how can we save electricity, how can we save water, making sure we're switching off the light and turning off taps, and all of these types of stuff to make sure that we are all playing our part in our environment. With my kids, like I said earlier, it's all about value. I know you can't work right now, but you can still add value to the environment that you're in. That's this house. That's keeping your room clean. That's making sure that we don't waste food. That's making sure that we don't waste energy. Also, how we talk to one another. I am seeing far too often now that, yes, we are making more money, and yes, our kids are going to really good schools and doing all these extracurricular activities, but we're losing our culture. Our kids don't even know how to greet. I mean, when I was a kid, if you didn't say hello to an adult when they were there, you was in big, big trouble. And that was both African and Caribbean. That wasn't just an African thing. That was both African and Caribbean. And we're raising kids that maybe have a bit more, privilege, and they've got mobile phones, and, they're going horse riding and all of this stuff. But they can't do the common things, and we're losing our culture. And it's really important to understand that these are the people that are going to inherit our money. And so if we don't empower them, not only from a point of finance, but also from a point of behavior, you're gonna die after working so hard, pass all this money to them, and it's going to be squandered. And the generation that comes after them are going to think you did nothing, because they're going to see nothing. And so it's really important that we understand we're not just passing down money and assets, we're also passing down culture, behavior, and financial education.
If you're from a smaller island or, the country which is not as well represented in the
Yeah,
UK, it does become a little bit harder to keep that cultural, practice intact. I think it's good that your kids will have it, but yeah, I do worry that moving forward, like you say, they'll become so YouTube focused.
exactly.
That's not on there. You don't see that on there, or like you say, hi auntie, hi uncle. You don't see that.
No, see it exactly. It's true, and it's important. It's important. Like, and that's one of the I watching Crazy Rich Asians, and I love that movie because they are practicing culture from 200 years ago, still today. And because of that, they can't deviate, they can't fail. Because this is tried and tested. This is not, oh, let's try this new thing that we're doing now. This has worked for us for centuries, and we are going to carry on doing it. And that's where we need to get to if we really want people to take us seriously. That's why wherever you go in this world, you will see a Chinatown. Everywhere I go, I see Chinatown. No matter what country I go to, there's a Chinatown. And it's like, that's their culture. They've taken it, and because where they go, they bring value. We have to accept it, and it's important because our food is amazing, our culture is amazing, and it's something that we can sell, we can monetize. Like, that's what other people are doing. And I'm on Netflix. I watch a lot of South African movies on Netflix, and love them. And it doesn't matter that whether they're speaking in English or not. Like, I can watch it and enjoy it. And so if this is coming into people's homes, if people are watching our culture, when I go to the Nigerian restaurants, I see non-Nigerians in there now. This means that we can sell. People are accepting our culture. This is something that we can export. We can take places. So there are so many opportunities for us in this in this current time. We need to make sure that we're taking control of it. Because if not, what will happen is that places like when I go to Nigeria, I find out that I'm going to restaurants and they're owned by people that are Lebanese. I'm eating Nigerian food in a Nigerian restaurant in Nigeria, not owned by a Nigerian.
I think it is that's the hardest bit for most people because, like you said at the beginning, when we were talking about group
Yes,
economics, very few people at the moment are thinking in terms of group. Even partner economics makes a difference. So we need to move away from that like,
yes,
individualistic. It's I've got to make everything kind of mindset, and that is really
exactly.
quite tough. But it's a good way of looking at it in terms of how much tax you're giving away, basically.
We're not going to have a voice until we have ownership. And if we're always relying on somebody else to feed us, somebody else to house us, somebody else to help us and support us, no one's ever going to take us seriously. And that's why we need to have other streams of income. Because if you know that if I say something, I'm going to lose my job, that they have control and they have all the power. But if you have other streams of income to fall back on, you know that even if they let me go, I can support myself and I can go and find another job.
What do you see next for yourself in terms of like what's your next big plan?
Yes, the next big thing is onestopsave.com. So onestopsave.com is my comparison website. So on that site, it launched in January and we're just building and growing. But on that site, you can compare car insurance, home insurance, travel insurance. You can compare loans and credit cards to make sure you're getting the best deal. We've got deals coming on the site. We want to be able to get to the point where people can compare energy prices, gas, electricity. We've got tips on how to start a business, how to build your side hustle, how to make money work for you. So we're going to continue to grow it and build it out. But we want it to be a one-stop shop, a one-stop place for people when it comes to finance, when it comes to money, a trusted source of information.
And is that what you want to be? Do you want to be the face of financial advice in the UK?
I want to be financial advice in the globe. I want to do it. I want to, my aim is to get a Netflix or Amazon Prime show on finance and so forth, and then that be bought all across the world, and people be able to see, the way I look at money, the way I look at wealth, the way I look at making money work for you, and have those, because those principles are universal. Each country will have its own rules and regulations and so forth, but the principles of it are the same wherever you are on the planet. So for me, it's about getting those key principles out across the globe.
Okay. And do you see yourself expanding into Nigeria, maybe, like being more global? And if so, a lot of people from the UK want to go to the
Yeah.
States. Obviously, that's where we sort of see it. But I think the move is going to start being towards Africa
Yeah.
as opposed to the States.
I feel Africa has less barriers to entry. I think with Africa also, with Africa, you come there and you can quickly make change because you're earning pounds here and your pounds are very strong in those economies. But where I am now is I'm building up my presence here in the UK. I'm building up my respect here in the UK to then, and that's what they work on. It's the respect. What have you done? You know, and if you're able to do certain things in the UK, doors will open for you in Africa. And so, you know, I'm definitely seeing much more opportunity there. Whereas, you know, America's similar to here where, yes, the opportunities are better there than here, but you've still got a lot of bureaucracy. You still got a lot of, you know, there's a lot more competition to get there. Whereas I feel, you know, Africa's almost, you get in early, and that's where you're gonna make the real money. Like, you know, let's say you can make thousands in the UK and the US. You can make millions in Africa over the longer term. You know, so yeah, and I think it's so much cheaper to start a business over there. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth doing.
So where can people find you? Give us all your ats.
Yes, so the socials is the Eman Effect UK on all the social medias there. Emmanuel Asuquo on LinkedIn. It's emmanuelasuquo.com is the website. And team@emmanuelasuquo.com is the email address.
All right, brilliant. And thank you so much for your time. That's been really useful from my perspective. I think, you know, it's always good to sort of like talk it through and sort of work out where the industry's at now as well, and sort of like what people can do, because I think it's like the economy changes and we're in a really but we're in a really interesting place where there's opportunities but there's also challenges. So that's really, really useful.